Part 1. The Seeds of Memory. The aroma of instant coffee and chalk dust was the perfume of their adolescence. The living room of Luca's small flat in Balham smelled exactly as he remembered, a scent that was a mixture of late-night revision sessions, youthful dreams, and the unshakable security of a friendship that seemed forged to last a lifetime. Now, 10 years older and sitting on the same worn-out sofa, he and Matt looked at each other through the veil of adult experience. The flat was the same, but the men decidedly were not. "Remember when we tried to set up that bicycle courier service in sixth form?" Luca asked, a smile playing on his lips as he stirred a spoon of sugar into his tea. His body language was more restrained than the boy he'd been, his movements revealing the weight of a corporate career in the city that was consuming him from the inside. Matt laughed, a deep, genuine sound that echoed in the empty room. "Remember? Blimey, we nicked your sister's bike and your mom's picnic hamper. We said we were going to dominate the local logistics market." He opened his arms in a wide, theatrical gesture that still carried the contagious enthusiasm of his youth. Matt had studied graphic arts in Brighton and returned to London with a digital portfolio and a heart full of ideas, but with few concrete prospects. It lasted, 3 days? Until I broke the bike going down Balham High Road. And I got chased by Mrs. Higgins' terrier, Luca completed, shaking his head with a bittersweet nostalgia. "We thought we were geniuses. Could barely tie our own shoelaces." A comfortable silence fell over them, familiar as an old blanket. It was this shared memory, this recollection of innocent failure, that had brought them to this moment. Both were at a crossroads in their lives. Luca, a financial analyst, felt like a cog in a gigantic, faceless machine, his soul slowly being hollowed out in exchange for a comfortable yet meaningless salary. Matt, a freelance graphic designer, swam in uncertainty, jumping from project to project, yearning for something that was truly his, something that carried his signature and Luca's, just like in the old days. It was Matt who broke the silence, his voice a whisper laden with possibility. What if we gave it another go? Properly this time. Luca looked at him, his tired eyes meeting his friend's sparkling ones. The idea was absurd. They had bills to pay, responsibilities. But deep within that weariness, a small flame ignited. The flame of remembering what it felt like to be alive, to feel like an us. "Doing what?" asked Luca, his voice cautious. "I don't know," Matt admitted, a disarming smile on his face. "But we know how, together, like we always have." And so, in that room full of happy ghosts, two brains, one mission was born. The name was a joke from Matt, a homage to their school days when they believed their combination of logic and creativity could conquer the world. In the following months, that joke became an obsession. Evenings and weekends were spent in that same flat, now transformed into a makeshift headquarters. The floor became littered with Matt's sketches, logos, app concepts, product designs, while Luca covered the walls with post-its full of numbers, market projections, and business plans. The energy was electric. It complemented each other like yin and yang. Luca was the anchor, meticulous and analytical. Matt was the sail, visionary and inspiring. They argued with the passion of brothers, their voices rising in heated debates about brand strategy or profit margins, but they always ended up laughing, remembering why they were doing it. It was during one of these brainstorming sessions that the final idea crystallized. Matt, frustrated with the difficulty of finding trustworthy local artists to decorate his flat, lay on the floor and complained. "Why isn't there a place where you can find everything that's made here in London? Proper things with a story?" Luca, who was wrestling with a spreadsheet, stopped. His eyes met Matt's. "A digital marketplace," he said slowly. "But not just any marketplace. A platform for stories, crafts, regional products, emerging designers, all with their own narrative. We connect the creators directly with people who value authenticity." Root and Branch was conceived. The idea was to create an online platform that was more than a shopping site. It would be a community that celebrated the essence of British craftsmanship. In the following months, they dove in headfirst. Luca used his savings to buy the domain and rent a small office in a renovated old building in Shoreditch. Matt designed a stunning visual identity, inspired by Victorian tiles and London brickwork. They worked until the early hours, surviving on coffee and the adrenaline of building something of their own. The launch was a modest but hopeful event. They sent emails to every contact they had, shared on social media to the point of exhaustion. In the first few days, there was a small traffic spike, mainly from curious friends and family. But as the weeks passed, the harsh reality began to set in. Website traffic stagnated, sales were rare and sparse. The creators, initially excited, began to drop out, frustrated by the lack of visibility. Root and Branch wasn't failing spectacularly, was dying a slow, silent death, a withering that was infinitely more painful. The pressure began to weigh on them. Their discussions, once productive, became more heated and less frequent. Luca, the pragmatist, saw the numbers sinking and began to question every decision. Matt, the dreamer, felt his creativity being strangled by financial anxiety. The seed they had planted with so much love seemed to be rotting in the arid soil of the real market. And the worst part was that, for the first time in their entire lives, the silence between them was no longer comfortable. It was heavy, laden with the unspoken fear that perhaps their greatest achievement, their friendship, might be the next victim of their failure. End of Part 1. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing to the channel. Part 2. The winter of doubt autumn in London brought with it a curtain of fine, persistent rain, seeming to wash the color from the city, leaving everything in a tone of wet pavement and low gray sky. Inside the small Root and Branch office, the atmosphere was equally gloomy. The air smelled of damp and resigned despair. Root and Branch was on the brink of collapse. Luca's accounts were nearly at zero. The office rent was overdue, and the difficult conversation with the landlord was a sword of Damocles hanging over their heads. Matt was working on poorly paid freelance projects on the sly, just to afford the internet connection and keep the site online. The dream that had united them was now tearing them in opposite directions. "We have to face facts, Matt," said Luca, his voice flat and tired. He was sitting at his desk, the monitor light casting deep shadows under his eyes. A set of charts showing the website's virtually non-existent traffic was open on the screen. "This isn't working. We're throwing my money down a bottomless pit." Matt, leaning against the window watching the rain fall, didn't turn around. His pride was wounded. "So, that's it? We give up? Chuck 6 months of work because the numbers aren't pretty?" His voice was rough, a mixture of anger and hurt. "This isn't a painting you're not happy with, Matt. This is a business, and a business needs to make money to survive." Luca's voice rose, echoing in the empty space. It was the first time he had truly shouted at his friend. Matt finally turned, his face pale. "I know it's a business, Luca, but it was also supposed to be our dream. And you're treating this like it's just another one of your corporate spreadsheets. Where's the passion? Where's the faith? Faith doesn't pay the rent." Luca slammed his hand on the desk, sending a mug of pens scattering. The sound of plastic skittering across the wooden floor echoed like a gunshot. The silence that followed was icy, cutting. The two men stared at each other, panting like strangers. The wall that had built up between them in recent weeks had materialized into a physical chasm in that room. Matt grabbed his jacket. "I need air," he said, his voice trembling, and walked out, closing the door with a soft click that was somehow more frightening than a slam. Luca was left alone, shaking with adrenaline and rage. He looked around the office at Matt's beautiful sketches on the walls, at the logo they had loved so much, at the empty desks waiting for a team that never came. A wave of nausea and absolute failure rose in his throat. He had failed, not just the business, but as a friend. He had let the stress and fear corrupt the only thing that had always been constant in his life. That night, Luca didn't go home. He stayed in the office, sitting in the dark. At one point, he picked up his mobile and, almost without thinking, called his girlfriend Eleanor. He wasn't one to open up easily, but that night, the words came out in a disordered stream of frustration, fear, and regret. He talked about the pressure, the impending failure, and finally, the argument with Matt. "Luca," said Eleanor, her voice calm and wise on the other end of the line, "you and Matt, you're like those old oak trees in Richmond Park. The roots are so intertwined that when one shakes, the other feels it. But it's that tangle that keeps them standing during the storms. You're shaking, but don't forget your roots." Across the city, Matt was doing something similar. Sitting in his parents' kitchen in Wembley, drinking tea with his mom, he poured his heart out. "He doesn't see the vision, Mom. He only sees the numbers." His mother placed a hand over his. "Matt, Luca has always been the ground to your sky. Without his ground, you fly off and get lost. Without your sky, he gets stuck looking at the dirt. Need each other. There's no shame in failing. The shame is letting pride destroy a friendship like yours." Their words, though spoken separately, hit Luca and Matt with the force of a revelation. The next morning, a cold, damp Saturday, they both showed up at the same time at the office door. Their eyes met, red and tired, and a silent understanding passed between them. There were no formal apologies, just a slow nod, a recognition of shared pain. It was Luca who spoke first. "I was a prat." "Me too," said Matt, a small, weary smile appearing on his face. "My mom said I'm a terrible listener." Eleanor said, "We're like old trees." They went in, and instead of sitting at their desks, they sat on the floor, leaning against the same wall, like they used to when they were kids. And for the first time in weeks, they talked. Not about keywords or conversion rates, but about fear. The fear of failure, the fear of disappointment, the fear of losing each other. From that raw and vulnerable conversation, a new strategy was born. More humble, more realistic. Instead of trying to conquer the world, they would focus their energies on London. Instead of an impersonal online platform, they would make Root and Branch a bridge between the online and the offline. "What if," suggested Matt, his eyes regaining some of their familiar sparkle, "we organized a physical market, a one-off event, to show the city what we have, Saturday at Spitalfields Market?" Luca didn't immediately raise financial objections. Instead, he thought, "We could invite all the makers we have on the books and sell the little bit of stock we have in the storage unit. It would be a way to generate some quick cash and, more importantly, to show we're still alive." It was a last-ditch effort, an all or nothing. In the days that followed, a new energy, born not from naive euphoria, but from the solid determination of those with nothing left to lose, took hold of them. They worked like a well-oiled machine. Luca handled the council permits with fierce tenacity. Matt designed beautiful posters and flyers and distributed them all over the city. He called personally. Every single one of the artisans and artists. Their honesty about the struggle of Root and Branch was so moving that many who had given up decided to give them a second chance. The winter of their doubt had not ended, but the first seed of a new, much hardier hope was beginning to break through the frozen ground. End of part 2. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing to the channel. Part 3. The Harvest of Union. The Saturday of the market dawned with a sky of a rare, clean winter cobalt blue, as if the universe itself was giving its blessing. Spitalfields Market, with its Victorian cast-iron structure and cobbled floors, was transformed into a stage of colors, sounds, and aromas. Luca and Matt, helped by Eleanor and Matt's girlfriend, the energetic teacher Beatrice, had worked since sunrise setting up the white stalls that fluttered gently in the breeze. The Root and Branch logo, a stylized tree whose roots and branches intertwined to form a perfect circle, stood out on each one. The nerves were palpable, a metallic taste in everyone's mouth. This was their last shot. At 10 in the morning, the first people began to arrive. A trickle that, to Luca's despair, remained slow for the first hour. He paced back and forth, obsessively checking his phone, his face a picture of anxiety. Matt, on the other hand, tried to keep spirits up, chatting animatedly with the makers, whose faces also began to show concern. Then it happened. An article in the local paper about two childhood friends trying to revitalize local commerce, combined with Matt's visually stunning marketing campaign, began to bear fruit. A group of tourists appeared. Then, local families, and suddenly the market began to fill up. The trickle became a steady flow, and the flow became a lively crowd. The air filled with the sound of animated chatter. The smell of fresh sourdough and scones a producer was selling, the clinking of wooden spoons on Staffordshire pottery. The Root and Branch makers were in their element, telling the stories behind their products. The woman who knitted lamb's wool blankets with traditional patterns. The young man who made artisan goat's cheese. The couple who created jewelry inspired by London's architecture. Luca and Matt were no longer managing. They were living the moment. Luca, surprisingly, discovered a talent for sales, passionately explaining the root and branch philosophy to every curious customer. Matt, with his camera, captured the moments of genuine connection, a customer laughing with a potter, a child admiring a wooden toy. Eleanor and Beatrice ran the small till like a Formula One team, with an efficiency that impressed Luca. By late afternoon, the success was undeniable. Many of the makers had sold out completely. The central root and branch stall where they sold experience kits with products from various creators was completely wiped out. The exhaustion on Luca and Matt's faces was no longer from despair, but from an exhausted and deeply satisfied happiness. As the team began to dismantle the stalls under the golden evening light, Amita and Matt stepped away, leaning against the market's iron railings. They looked at what they had achieved, not in terms of profit, which they quickly calculated this would be enough to pay the back rent and reinvest, but in terms of impact, they had created something real. "We did this," said Matt, his voice laden with emotion. "Us, 2 brains, 1 mission." Luca put an arm around his friend's shoulders, a simple gesture that sealed the complete reunion of their friendship. "We did, and it wasn't my spreadsheet or your drawings that saved the day. It was this." He pointed to the market, to the people. It was remembering why we started it. The victory was not just financial, it was emotional and relational. To celebrate the following week, Luca and Matt organized a dinner together with Eleanor and Beatrice. It was a noisy night. Full of laughter were the 2 women, who until then had only known each other by sight, found themselves laughing at the same things and sharing their own stories about their partner's stubbornness and genius. At that dinner, Root and Branch ceased to be just a business run by 2 friends. It became a project uniting 2 families. The following months saw organic and solid growth. The market's success catapulted the visibility of the online platform. New creators joined, attracted by the story of resilience and the community being built. Luca and Matt had learned their lesson. Their strength lay not in the absence of conflict, but in how they reconciled and united in the face of adversity. 1 year later, on a summer afternoon, the 2 families were gathered in the garden of the house. Luca and Eleanor had just bought in the home counties. It's the children of a mutual friend, the future. Suggesting both families had moved forward in that chapter ran across the lawn, their shouts of joy filling the air. Luca and Eleanor, hand in hand, watched Matt and Beatrice animatedly discussing the decoration of their own flat, recently renovated in Islington. Luca looked at this picture, his wife, his best friend, the family he had helped create, the life they had built together, and felt a profound peace. Root and Branch was now a respectable business, but its greatest legacy was not in the sales reports. It was there in that garden, in that unbreakable bond that had been tempered in the fire of failure and solidified in the victory of union. He turned to Matt, who was approaching with 2 bottles of ale in hand. "You know," said Luca, accepting his bottle, "a year ago, we were drowning. Now, look at this." Matt followed his gaze, a serene smile on his face. "Well," he said, tapping his bottle against Luca's with a soft clink, "now we're rooted." It was true. The seed of their childhood friendship, nearly killed by the winter of doubt, had not only survived, but had blossomed, stronger and more beautiful than ever, bearing fruit that would nourish their families for a lifetime. The true root and branch of all their success, they finally understood, had never been a business idea. It had always been their friendship. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing to the channel.